A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. Easier said than done. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deskarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Chapter 9, The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev, is the final instructions of Bhishma Dev to his dear nephews. Bhishma Dev accepted a responsibility for the Pandavas after the departure of Pandu, like his sons, although he had no sons. They were like his sons, and thus one can say his sons. And that's allowed. No formality, no ritual, but like sons, or grandsons, even more precisely. And the affection of the grandfather to the grandson is special. Qualified grandfather, qualified grandchildren, special affection, perfectly natural. There's lots to say about social nuances. In other words, on the one hand, the social nuances, he saw the Pandavas as his grandsons. He respected them, naturally so, because they were the rightful heirs to the throne after Pandu's departure, and yet he fought on the other side. Now, the fought on the other side has its material or cultural or dharmic explanation, and then there's the transcendental experience of apparently, ostensibly, taking a position opposed to Krishna, which meant opposed then to the Pandavas, although he saw them as his grandchildren. The Kauravas are also like grandchildren, but the affection especially goes to the Pandavas, obviously. They had their father and the Pandavas had no father, so they're protectionless. Here he's speaking about give protection, not just to family members, but give protection to the entire world, because, as we know, the scene is Kurukshetra battle is over. Procedures have been formalized for Yudhishthira to be installed as the emperor, and Bhishma Dev is still lying on the battlefield. So they go with formality, much to the pleasure of Bhishma Dev. It's done. Yudhishthira is formally the emperor, so he's come in his regal attire and all those things for the pleasure of Bhishma Dev, because they knew Bhishma Dev's heart, although he was in the opposite position, which made for, all kinds of conflict for the Pandavas to fight against the grandfather. Of course, all of the other persons on the other side were relatives, but Bhishma Dev being such an exalted devotee of Krishna and in opposition, how is it? This is Arjuna's dilemma in Bhagavad Gita. So the message in the purport, one of the messages is, when Krishna gave instructions to Arjuna, deliberately, the instructions were for the world, for ages and ages and ages yet to come. It's for the world. The person being instructed is a dear devotee, and the dear devotee was placed in illusion so that Krishna could instruct him, and he could become out of illusion and act in Krishna consciousness. And so similarly, the message of Bhagavad Gita is meant for the world, and similarly, the message for Yudhisthira as the elder brother of the Pandavas, and thus the Pandavas, and thus the world. So embedded in this chapter it's like a mini Bhagavad Gita, only the speaker is Bhishma Dev. And then the duties of mankind, and at least for the executive or an administrator, in this case, emperor of the world, but anyone that's taking a responsibility for dependents. The king accepts responsibility, parent accepts responsibility, teacher accepts responsibility for a dependent. There's categories and different roles, but the principle is giving protection. And in giving protection, one of the obligations of a protector is to help people that are undergoing tribulation. Now, we've all had experience. How to help somebody that's undergoing tribulation feel, not just nod their head and check the box that says, okay, it's mercy of Krishna, but to feel the mercy of Krishna while passing through tribulation. That's not easy. But it's a duty. And to say it's a duty does not mean speaking and conducting oneself in a cold-hearted way. There may be some support for the affection of an individual to some misfortune, or as Prabhupada is saying here, tribulation. And sometimes tribulations aren't short-term. Sometimes tribulations are long-term. And after one tribulation gets some resolution, then comes another and comes another. I think we all know people that their lives the landscape of their life is like that. One tribulation after another tribulation. And the message doesn't change. Mercy of Krishna message. And how to affectively help someone feel, Krishna's mercy. So there's teachings that can help, but the teachings that can help are effective to the degree that one has understood the nature of Krishna, the loving nature of Krishna, the kind nature of Krishna. And for me, one of the classics is Sudama Brahman visiting Krishna because his wife was anxiety about how skinny he was. And when he went to see Krishna, Krishna worshipped him, and Krishna did what Krishna did, and at the end, he snatched some of the broken rice that was in the bag that he was hiding behind his back. We had that. There's a devotee I know very well named Prabhu, a GBC member from Ireland. And one of the things he likes to do is drama and skits. So some of us was in the category of some of us were to perform a skit, and then the audience was to guess what the skit was about without our saying anything as the skit performers. And so the skit was about Sudama and Krishna, so that the skit performers could talk amongst themselves, but once the skit started, there was no conversation. It says silent skit, and the audience is supposed to raise their hand and say whatever the skit's about. Anyway, he likes drama. So different things were done at the end. I remember very clearly to this day. You should have put a little bag behind your hand, behind your back, and then offer something Krishna can snatch from a little bag behind your back. Then everybody will know what the skit's about. And then Rukmini catching Krishna's hand, that's enough. No more. This isn't fit for you. And Sudama felt the same, but Krishna didn't feel the same. And then, as he's going home, this is the main part. Sudama was thinking Krishna's very. He knew why I came, but he didn't ask me why I came, because if he asked me why I came, I'm a Brahmin, I'd have to tell the truth. And then Krishna would reciprocate like anything. But Krishna is very kind. He knows that if I get something very valuable, I'll become proud of that valuable thing. And so he didn't ask me because he didn't want me to become proud. Krishna is very kind. Krishna is very kind. Walking home. It's the mood is something like different, but something like Akrura entering into Vrindavan to bring Krishna to Mathura. And he's meditating all the way about Krishna, Krishna's qualities, Krishna's form, Krishna this, Krishna that, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. So Sudama was similarly very Krishna conscious. They're classmates from childhood, and now Sudama has become a mature adult as a Brahmana, and Krishna has become a mature adult as a Kshatriya. And so Krishna took the role of worshipping the Brahmana. The Kshatriya worships the Brahmana, literally worshipped him, literally, arti, everything, washed his feet, everything. When we perform deity worship, we do the same. So Krishna was treating Sudama like a deity, which is appropriate. And then when he reached home, his home was missing. Instead, there was a big palace, and his wife came from the palace. And then he realized Krishna is very kind. Although I didn't ask him, he knew, and so he arranged. So misfortune, good fortune. For the devotee, it's the same. Krishna is very kind. So good fortune, misfortune. Besides, destitute or palace, with poverty or riches. Krishna is kind, and Krishna is kind, and Krishna is kind. So tribulation may be short-term, medium-term, long-term. Time duration, how to see tribulation, because it doesn't, generally speaking, tribulation doesn't feel comfortable. It's uncomfortable. By design, it's uncomfortable. Tribulation. One is deprived of something that one may consider important or even necessity or something, and it's just not there. So we're dependent upon the Supreme Independent, and the Supreme Independent, especially, there's a different rule for the devotee than for the non-devotee. For the non-devotee, tribulation means rectification of karma. I know devotees, we probably all know devotees. Recently, I was just invited into a conversation with somebody who, without too much description, their husband diagnosed as not having terminal cancer, but cancer. And they were going to be right away, it was at such a stage, surgery, cancer surgery. Yikes. And anxiety and anxiety and anxiety. How to take it and how will this group of family members perceive, and those people that don't know us well, how they, so it was multiple layers of tribulation, emotional largely, of course physical, but largely emotional. So we're all called upon from time to time to provide spiritual guidance to people. And so there's a nice example how to see that as that tribulation in the different layers of how it's perceived as the merciful nature of Krishna. I'll read the last sentence of the purport. A pure devotee of the Lord accepts tribulations as favors from the Lord. Since the Lord is absolute, there is no mundane difference between the two. No mundane difference between the two. The transcendental difference is it's like meeting and separation. Good fortune, ill fortune. Things are going well, then there's tribulation. And from Krishna's point of view, they're the same. From the devotee's point of view, there's no material or mundane difference between the two. In other words, the relationship with Krishna is unchanged between the devotee that's undergoing tribulation and the one that's not. The relation with Krishna is unchanged, and intensification of shelter on the spiritual side, intensification of shelter on the spiritual side can be created by the tribulation. And there's no exception. That is to say, even in the spiritual plane, there's tribulation. One of the classic ones is Krishna leaving the rasa dance. Now there's the external, the gopis were feeling proud, and then there's another layer of transcendental. How can the gopis feel proud? Is there such a thing as spiritual pride as opposed to material pride? In any case, leaving that conversation to the side. I'll go there for a minute. I've already started conversation about next year's Memorial Day weekend retreat.
Yeah.
This event coming is the Srimad Bhagavatam is the refuge for all in this age of Kali. And next year is going to be Krishna's Braja Leela. So by chance, I sent an invitation to Garuda Prabhu, Prabhupada disciple, godbrother, and invited him, and he immediately agreed, and he has his 3 topics. And they're all in relation to Krishna's Rasa Leela. Now it's going to be up there, but he's a Sanskrit scholar. He's not going to be going into esoteria that's above the heads of everybody. But this is a topic he likes. So 3 different approaches on the topic of Krishna's Rasa Leela for an audience that he doesn't know. And who knows from the audience he doesn't know how many are newer and how many are experienced and how many are somewhere in between. So I trust him. I'm sure he'll calibrate how he speaks according to that audience. But there's lessons even in its most elevated personalities, the gopis, and their relationship with Krishna, where there's tribulation. And they're not feeling, oh, Krishna's being very kind. But Krishna's being very kind. Absolutely kind. They're experiencing a transcendental emotion, madness, that's due to their feelings of separation from Krishna. And they do mad things that mad people will do, and Krishna's watching from behind a tree. Or some painting that shows him he's climbed up in a branch of a tree, but he's hiding, and he's observing, and he's hearing, and he understands that pride was an apparent kind of pride, not the material kind of pride. In any case, so to enable the gopis to experience an intensification of their love, an attachment for him to the point of transcendental madness, he performed the pastime of leaving, which was a tribulation. But with that tribulation was mercy or benediction. Now the gopis weren't thinking, oh, Krishna is very kind. They were feeling something else. But it doesn't change that Krishna is very kind position. So now back to our everyday life. This is Bhishma Dev speaking to the Pandavas. You know, he knows Yudhisthira, and Yudhisthira, although Yudhisthira and the four brothers were doing only what Krishna wanted, they weren't ambitious for position, etc., 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 etc. They did what Krishna wanted because they're Krishna devotees. Then naturally afterwards, they're feeling some remorse. Naturally. Feelings of remorse is natural. Even for the Pandavas who are on a transcendental platform. So what's that feeling of remorse? It's another, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, the feelings of regret or remorse for a devotee that purposefully did X with the understanding that X is what will please Krishna, so I did X. And then afterwards there may be some regret. No, it's really important to have a good GPS system. You know, the position of pleasing Krishna needs to be very carefully considered. The heart's consideration of pleasing Krishna needs to be carefully considered. Under the guidance of Scripture, Prabhupada is here speaking about the Lord in the heart and in the external representative of Krishna. So sincerity, in other words, with proper direction is very important. Here's one of the sentences, the third sentence in the purport. The devotee does not have to learn anything new from the Lord because the Lord teaches the sincere devotee always from within. Now, how do we discern here's some inspiration from within that's coming from Krishna versus here's some inspiration that's coming from within that's not coming from Krishna? It's coming from the mind or the modes of nature or, something foolish, something misguided, misdirected. How are we going to discern that? You're a sincere devotee. Supposing someone is a sincere devotee, and some inspiration comes. How do I evaluate? Is this, so our standard is Guru Sadhu Shastra. And a conscientious, sincere Vaishnava takes the time to become familiar with Guru Sadhu Shastra. And then decisions are taken based upon confirmation, the internal confirmation or the external confirmation of something that came as an inspiration internally. Supposing you're not sure, then it's a good idea to pause and evaluate over time. If it's possible, circumstance may not permit to wait, but if it's not clear and the circumstance permits, then you pause. You introspect and you study scripture and you consult sadhus and guru, but sometimes we're in circumstances we need to act. And then comes the position of humility, my dear Lord Krishna. I'm unqualified, but I'm called upon to serve you, so you kindly accept. And if this isn't what you want, then please give me a sign or some indication, internally or externally. And we're ready for taking a different course of action than the one that was chosen. I remember 30 years ago, I wrote a little essay on this, how to decide courses of action. These are just some principles. So now it's not decision-making time. The decision-making time was before the Kurukshetra battle. And there's Grandfather Bhishma lying in a bed of arrows. He is pacifying them instead of the other way around. Very interesting. Because he's Grandfather Bhishma. And they know he's such an elevated person. Even in that circumstance, he's ready to give a Bhagavatam class. With great clarity, complete clarity. Because for him, pleasing Krishna is everything. And Yudhishthira is being instructed, give protection. The whole world needing your protection. It's not, Yudhishthira was wise. He was also a powerful Kshatriya. But amongst the powerful Kshatriyas, persons may have been more powerful than he, but he wasn't, weakling. But his main gift was his Krishna consciousness, or the purity of his Krishna consciousness, able to give direction. So that was, and he's taking an able to give direction person, taking direction from another who had taken the role of a Kshatriya, giving him advice on the duties of a Kshatriya. Okay, so aside from the Varnashram picture of Yudhishthira's accepting a certain position in the world, he's very blessed by having Grandfather Bhishma resetting his direction. Don't pause. You're the king, you're the emperor. Give protection. And give protection with arms, but also with his wisdom and his maturity. And that's what Yudhishthira did. Okay, so nice verse. Let's see if there's some discussion on this nice verse.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I wanted to understand why Pandavas were aggrieved after Kurukshetra.
You want to understand the Pandavas?
Why they were in grief?
Why they were what?
They were sad. They went to Bhishma there for pacification, right? They were aggrieved.
They were aggrieved for him. situation.
Even after doing the Krishna's will, like Krishna wanted the battle to happen, and weren't they satisfied that they did Krishna's will?
Yeah, well, they did because it was Krishna's will, but I explained this. The soft-heartedness of a Vaishnava is, even in a circumstance like this for the Pandavas, or you can say for us, the outcome may be misfortune for others. And those soft-hearted feelings are natural for a Vaishnava. It's not, they didn't become callous. Look, so many people had no problem because Krishna wanted it. They were the instruments of what Krishna wanted, and they felt some grief. You mentioned earlier, so many daughters and wives and ladies without their protectors.
So doing Krishna's will is not exactly fully satisfying and fulfilling.
No,
There will be
it's not that they're fulfilling Krishna's will is not fully satisfying. There's consequences in fulfilling Krishna's will, and one doesn't become callous to those consequences. Let's take, I'm thinking, an example. Supposing that recently in Potomac there was a temple open. To make the temple opening, they had to cut some trees. They had to knock out the White House, that house up on top of the hill. They needed the space. Then they knocked out some trees. So for the purpose of building a temple, you knock down trees and pull out the White House and put up this temple. But you may have some regret that poor trees and poor, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's nothing wrong with that. You're doing and feeling some regret for what was done. Now, there's things that one step that one can take, plant more trees. What about those guys that were in the place for so long? They were just innocently being a tree. And homes for other living entities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now that's clearly Krishna's will. And there's also clearly a sense of, I'm sure, a sense of regret. And then you could think of other examples and other examples. So those feelings of regret, that's part of the soft-heartedness of Vaishnava, because they care. They understand transcendence and they care. So many someones may not even acknowledge that, look, to build this temple, we had to chop some trees. But we built the temple. But someone, I'm sure, is feeling that. Okay, so that's just one little example. And go back to this. They knew what Krishna wanted, and here's all these dead bodies.
Mm.
You know, aside from they were of the same family, or this descendancy from the ancestors, thus family related relations. There's now less men and same number of women. Women need protection. So there's regret. Natural. Natural. Death. And so how to get protection to those so many ladies? Okay. There's consequences, and feel this, the misfortune that comes from some right action. It's just the soft-hearted nature of a Vaishnava. And then another Vaishnava may have to come along and solace one who's feeling that sadness, the loss that came as a result of this right action. Anyway. Finer sentiments aren't removed. when one becomes a devotee of Krishna, and I'm making my decisions along the path of what's pleasing to what Krishna wants, making my best effort, and then even so, consequences. Yes.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
You're on.
And a few thoughts.
Yeah.
I think in this verse, as I understand it, is Bhishma Dev is actually revealing his mood,
Yes.
his understanding, and his consciousness, and passing those on to Yudhishthira Maharaj.
Yes.
And I mean, it's actually he who accept the tribulations as the plan of the Lord and follow it, and it is he who is vowed to carry out his duty as a kshatriya,
Yes.
and he is passing those things on to Yudhishthira Maharaj, and I think it's remind me of the current situation in our movement. That is the transition from the passing away first generation and to the next generation, and how this kingdom, the kingdom of the Pandavas, is going to be like in the future. It's really depend on the next generation people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And another thought is I'm looking at the language Bhishma Dev is using when he spoke to Yudhishthira Maharaj. He said those subjects are anadhaha, and that word anadhaha is translated as helpless. And it's nata, and then the next word he used the word nata to it means the Lord.
Yeah.
Master. And so I think it's interesting because anatta, you take the literal meaning, it's actually masterless.
Yes.
Masterless, but the interpretation is helpless.
Yes.
So one who is masterless is helpless.
Yes.
I think that's quite an instructive expression in pursuance of the bhakti understanding.
Yeah. And his mandate to Yudhishthira to be the Nata.
Yes. Quite humorous in another sense.
Yes.
And another word he used, I think is quite impressive, is he used praja to address the subjects in the kingdom.
Yeah.
And praja, Srila Prabhupada always say, it's not just a human, but all those
Yes.
living entities inside the kingdom.
Anyone who takes birth in the kingdom is Praja. It's a big responsibility, being ruler or administrator or something. It's not just a small set of people. I mean, there's a direct small set of people, but then those small set of people have impact on all the others. Yes, behind you.
Hare Krishna. I think you covered some points about how to know the plan of Krishna every movement. So you
Super soul. You have to be connected to super soul, and even connected to super soul, you're not going to necessarily understand the plan of the Lord. It's mysterious, but you accept it.
Pardon?
Accept it,
Accept.
even if you don't understand the plan of the Lord. Accept it.
How to know every movement?
Well, you can't unless you're Christian. Or the most intimate associates, they know better than you and I, but they acknowledge the plan of the Lord is mysterious. I'm thinking because I was just recently going over it. Uddhava's contemplation that Krishna is going to leave. The circumstance was he saw signs. The signs included the sages cursing the son, the Yadu dynasty, they would all be destroyed. Due to an offense to those who, not just brahmanas, but exalted sages. One member caused the destruction of the entire dynasty. So there was a sign, and Uddhava understood the sign. And the plan of the Lord. The plan of the Lord was he's going to leave. No, it takes a very capable, close to the Lord person to understand that's his plan.
Individually also, Krishna has a plan for me also, right? So,
Well, for all, every.
everyone.
Yes. Now, the plan doesn't mean, at 5 o'clock you're going to do this, and at 6 o'clock you're going to do that. Not like that. Not that's the plan. Because free will is not outside of Krishna's plan. But so, yes, there's a plan for everyone, every living entity, but it's very flexible depending upon the use or proper use of free will. According to one's nature, according to the modes of nature, according to conditioning, according to so many factors. So the plan of the Lord may be for you and me to supply resources whereby we can go to Him. And then we're making free will choices based upon those resources that He sends our way to help you go to Him. So it's dynamic. Not static, it's quite dynamic. Very fluid. So the Lord's plan doesn't circumscribe, doesn't take away free will choices. Because then it becomes fatalistic. It really doesn't matter what I do because there's a plan. It's going to happen anyway, so et cetera, et cetera. Whatever will be, will be. And some people are fatalistic like that. So there's the relationship with Krishna is what is Krishna's plan, and whether we act on it or neglect it, or intermittently act on it and neglect it, that's our free will. Now, back to your question. You want to know, how can you know Krishna's plan moment to moment?
Yeah.
That's the starting point of your question.
Yeah.
And my answer is, even you're the most elevated soul, you're not, even the most elevated soul may intuitively, inspired by Krishna from within, Uddhava was inspired by Krishna within, to understand, you're going to leave. Please take me with you. Don't leave me here. Now Krishna had a plan. Krishna left. Then he left Uddhava behind. He could have. So, free will is not unrestricted. There's restrictions. He had some service for Uddhava. So he was to stay and do that service, and he did. Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else over here? Wait. Anyone else over here? Okay.
It's such a huge topic. This is such a huge topic. The plan of the spirit blood, it triggered so many things in.
Yes, so many.
I just want to read the Prabhupada's purport, which I recollected from Gita 11.34 regarding plan of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, go ahead.
He says,
Where are you reading from?
Gita 11.34. Bhagavad Gita 11.34.
11:34.
34. Yeah.
11:34.
We should act in Krishna consciousness and understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the medium of a spiritual master. The plans of the Supreme Lord are understood by His mercy, and the plans of the devotees are as good as His plans.
Now, there's still free will. And it's not that the spiritual master is omniscient. Spiritual master becomes a certified knower of everything that Krishna is, has in his intention with every circumstance, every moment, for everybody. The spiritual master is not omniscient. To expect a jiva to be omniscient is a misunderstanding of a jiva's position. The spiritual master understands what Krishna gives him the understanding to understand. And not more than that. So at least, two things. In principle, the spiritual master is one who has knowledge of the scripture and will live by and speak the message of the scripture. So, principle-based, yes. But the plan of the Supreme Lord in detail, in minutia, that's not a realistic expectation. And then next is to guide a living entity to come to that position of Krishna's full shelter, letting go of the shelter of the temporary. Another second function of the spiritual master. Under the guidance of the plan of the Lord, because that's the plan of the Lord ultimately. Living entities living entities leave behind the conditional life and take up an eternal relationship with Him. But now you want to say something further.
Last thing. So as long as I'm doing activities favorable to Krishna consciousness, so I can derive satisfaction that I am doing the plan of Krishna.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be, please, all of us, please, humility. I'm inadequate, I'm insufficient. Just was hearing Prabhupada discuss his arrival prayer in the Boston Harbor. He quoted the Bengali, it was like embedded in his heart. My dear Lord, I don't know why you brought me here. So it's a sense of insufficiency. But you brought me here, so if you like, so there's humility and full dependence. He's saying, I don't know why you brought me here. He knows that. Under the order of his Guru Maharaj, that's why he brought him here. But how to carry it out, I'm going to need the reciprocation. Idami Buddhi Yoga, tell me how to do. But I'm here, ready to do. Make me dance. Okay, we'll end there. Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.